What's up, guys? Today we're going to be comparing the iPad mini on the right to the iPod Touch 5th generation on the left. Both these products are boasting relatively similar specs in that they have the same A5 processor, 512 megabytes of RAM, and 32 gigabytes of storage. They're also both white and have 1.2 megapixel front-facing HD FaceTime cameras and 5 megapixel iSight cameras that record 1080p HD video. On the back, the only difference there is that the iPod Touch 5th generation does have flash, which is a very welcome feature. If we look at the back of the iPod, it comes in 5 different colors, which separates it from the iPad, which only comes in black and white. They're very similar in design. They have the aluminum backing with the Apple logo, camera. You also have the loop on the iPod Touch. Volume rocker on the left of the iPod Touch, and it is on the right of the iPad mini.
You can see it here.
The iPad mini also has a rotation lock and mute switch depending on how you set it in the software. That is absent on the iPod Touch. You have the lightning connector down there,
as well
with mono speakers and a 3.5mm headphone jack.
And on the iPad you have the stereo speakers, and the headphone jack resides on the top of the iPad.
Alright, so from a display standpoint, you have the Retina display on the iPod Touch, which is 326 pixels per inch, and you have same resolution as the iPad 2 on the iPad mini. I believe it is 164 pixels?
163 pixels.
163 pixels per inch.
Per inch, yes.
So it's not quite an HD display. It's also not 16 by 9. I personally like the width of the display because you just get a overall better experience. The only time it doesn't give you a better experience is in video watching, whereas there will be letterboxing up the top to make it fit into that 16 by 9 aspect ratio. So that's about it for the hardware differences. We're going to do some benchmarks, boot up, and just some comparisons within the operating system, which is iOS 6, of course.
1, 2, 3, boom.
So you got the new 4-inch display on the iPod Touch. You have a 7.9-inch screen on the iPad mini. Both relatively new sizes for Apple displays. Definitely very new for the iPad mini as it just came out yesterday, and only about a month and a half for the 4-inch display. I think what Apple was trying to do there was give you some advantages with the iPod Touch 5th generation, such as the LED flash, for example. The size might be more to your liking because it can fit in your pocket. Storage, better display, things of that nature just make it a little bit more appealing depending on what you like. So, alright, the iPad mini won. Both have about the same amount of stuff. We loaded them up with the same amount of songs and roughly the same amount of apps. Load it up.
Alright, so essentially these should be pretty similar just because they're the same spec.
Alright, so the iPad mini's done. It got a score of 750. And the iPod Touch is done. It got 625, so the iPad mini won in performance. One other thing I forgot to mention about the hardware is that the iPod Touch's camera is raised up so that when you set it down on a table, that is what it's resting on. So if you notice, whenever I press down on it, you can hear it like slam, the corners slam against the desk, which doesn't exactly make it feel like a premium product. Okay, so both of them have been cleared. Alright, so we're going to go into Safari now. We're both on the same network. I'm going to start out by going to our YouTube channel, which I have in my bookmarks. And another difference here is the keyboards. It's really what you prefer typing on. It's pretty easy to type on the 7-inch size screen, or even 8-inch. with this keyboard, especially since you can thumb type.
Even though you don't really need that necessarily, because I don't know, I just want to show this real quick. Like with the 7-inch display, you can pretty much get like, I have pretty large thumbs, but I can cross over easily and reach the whole keyboard, which I think is a nice feature of the iPad mini that is lacking in the iPad, the regular iPad. But I'm trying to stay on topic here and load our YouTube channel up. Alright, here we go.
And they're done, or the iPod touches. So let's load up our most recent video. Alright, they're playing in slightly different formats, but for the most part, they're the same.
Yeah, so they started almost exactly the same.
Both 4 seconds or so in. I think the iPod Touch had a slight lead. Alright.
Could we go to New York Times? Try to show you what the screens look like with some small lettering, and just show you how it would look with reading that type of website. Go. Alright, iPad got a little bit of a jump.
Alright, so still going.
Wow.
Finished at almost exactly the same time, which is what you would expect. They have similar specs, and both are very good at rendering the site. You can scroll around almost as fast as you want. There's a lot of content. Text is obviously going to be crisper on the iPod.
But honestly, with thinking that even though this isn't the Retina display and it doesn't really have that high of a pixel density, it still looks relatively good for seeing the content. We compared it to the Nexus 7, which you can look at in a linked video, and that has a higher res screen, around 216 pixels per inch, and this one actually looks a little bit more crisp. So still a great way to browse the web.
And obviously with this screen size, you see a lot more content, especially even compared with other tablets of the same size, such as the Nexus 7, as we already mentioned. You just get so much with this bezel to bezel width. It's really incredible. It's such a small form factor, but the display still seems so big. Okay, so now let's go into Apple Maps, which we have on both.
Uno, dos, tres.
Alright.
So, well, we don't have satellite on right now.
But for the most part, they got there in the same amount of time. If we scroll around, you'll see that you go pretty fast. They render in almost exactly the same amount of time, and they're both pretty good at it. So the iPad was significantly faster there, definitely. I always like to load up this game just because of the visual grass rolling out. Both devices have Siri. Just ask her a question and see which one has more screen real estate. Should I wear a jacket tomorrow?
The low temperature will be 32 degrees.
So as you can see there, the iPod Touch uses its full potential screen real estate, whereas the iPad mini uses maybe a fifth of its screen real estate, and it uses less than the iPod, so I'm not sure what that
It's
is.
pretty much the same size as on the iPod, so I don't know if Apple kind of skimped out on the software design and just used the same resolution for all of its Siri content on the iPad. I don't know why they did that, because they're wasting space, but I mean, looks pretty good, I guess.
Alright, so that sums up this video comparing the iPod Touch to the iPad. Both are very nice products, and they take a lot from each other in design and just the way they work. It really does still come down to preference. If you're going to be more into listening to music and having the device with you at all times, then go with the iPod Touch. But if you're more of a person who's just going to use the device at home, don't really want to use it for that much music, more for like streaming services like Netflix and stuff, definitely go with the iPad mini for only $30 more. It's really a fantastic tablet.